Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Today, we're going to jump back into the FinCen files and talk about how there is some bipartisan support for U.S. lawmakers to come together during this new omnibus bill and get rid of these anonymous shell companies. So that is certainly something that has been needed for quite some time, and the fact that there is bipartisan support for it is crucial in my opinion. How many times have we seen one party or the other, because of their ties to the financial world, go ahead and kill bills like this, or come up with some sort of asinine excuse why a bill like this shouldn't be passed? But I think now is the proper time for them to get it done. On the heels of the FinCen files coming out, we've had the Panama Papers come out. You know, there are ample reasons for this to be much more regulated. And, of course, we talk about it here on the podcast because it certainly relates to how Jeffrey Epstein was able to conduct business the way he was able to conduct business for so long. The financial system, the way it's set up, is set up for people such as Jeffrey Epstein to skirt around the laws, to find loopholes, and to find ways to launder money. And they have not, when I say they, I mean Congress or the Senate, lawmakers, they don't address this ever because, you don't think they're not benefiting from it? All of their bagmen, all of these bundlers on both sides are involved with all sorts of shady-ass shell companies and offshore dealings and stuff that we don't even know about. And that stuff was all brought to light during the Paradise Papers and the Panama Papers, and then with the FinCen files. All of the stuff that we speculated, all of the stuff we thought that they were up to, well, it was confirmed by those leaks and those dumps. And now lawmakers across the world, the EU, America, Australia, elsewhere, are now starting to take this a bit more serious. And you know why? Well, because the people are starting to get hip to it. Once the people are hip to their scams and their plots and their schemes, well, they'll just act like we didn't know anything was wrong here. We'll write different laws. Meanwhile, the laws were written in the first place by these people so that they could exploit them. But now that the people are aware and people are starting to catch on to what's really going on, of course they'll just plead ignorance. Oh, well, we didn't know that they were being exploited or that these loopholes were being used. We'll write some new laws. And inevitably, these new laws, well, they'll have loopholes and backdoors in them as well. Hopefully, with this new bit of bipartisanship we're going to see here in this bill, there won't be any backdoors. There won't be any loopholes. It'll just be black and white. That's what we need. Not some all-inclusive, comprehensive bill. Just a black and white bill that outlines the penalties for people who engage in this. With no slap on the wrist. With no, we'll get you next times. All right? If you're caught up with one of these shell companies, and these shell companies are engaged in illegal business, well, there shouldn't just be some sort of financial penalty. There should be a criminal penalty as well. With that in mind, let's take a look at our article this morning. This article is from the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, and the headline is, U.S. lawmakers move to end anonymous shell companies in National Defense Spending Bill. A major anti-money laundering reform is expected to arrive in annual omnibus legislation with bipartisan support. This article was authored by Spencer Woodman. Now, that's pretty awesome to hear, right? I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Gridlock, when it comes to issues like this, is not a good situation. There needs to be bipartisan support for bills such as this. People shouldn't dig in on either side and play tribal politics when it comes to something as important as stopping this money laundering from happening. As we've already established previously, Money laundering is the lifeblood for these people, these criminal organizations, people like Epstein, arms runners, the cartels. So if there's a way to stamp out this money laundering and there's a way to bring these people to justice who are engaging in it, then all of those avenues must be explored. And whatever sort of regulation power Congress has, they should use. Lawmakers in the United States say they have taken a significant step closer to enacting a major anti-money laundering reform that would make it more difficult to move dirty money through U.S. firms. Hallelujah. Now, of course, as usual, let me tamper down any expectations, right? Because the devil will be in the details. But it is certainly a good step in the right direction. We have seen the financial system, not only in the United States, but worldwide, be exploited by these people for far too long. These people have increased their wealth since the beginning of this pandemic at a rate that has never been seen ever before in the world. And these people are still stealing, robbing, laundering money, and sowing seeds of destruction everywhere they go. Hopefully, a powerful anti-money laundering law will not only give the investigators an inroad to prosecute people like this, but also, hopefully, it sends a message that this behavior is no longer going to be tolerated. Late last week, Democrats in the House and Senate announced that they had included provisions targeting anonymous shell companies into a must-pass national defense spending bill. The move is significant because, unlike many pieces of legislation that languish in Congress, the omnibus bill is often approved on a bipartisan basis to continue funding national defense. So, they slid this into the omnibus bill, which is honestly a good idea. I'm usually not too fond of inserting things into bills like this, but sometimes you have to force the issue. And I don't really think that this is a partisan type of situation. So I'm actually okay with the Democrats inserting this into the omnibus bill. I usually prefer clean bills, right? I'm a big fan of clean bills for the most part, but sometimes, man, you have to force the issue. Sometimes when your kid doesn't want to eat, you got to sit there with them until they'll eat the food. And sometimes that's what has to happen with these bills and in Congress. You have to force the issue sometimes, and that's what it looks like happening here. And putting it in this omnibus bill is honestly a very good strategy by the Democrats. It is past time to put an end to the secrecy that allows drug cartels, human traffickers, arms dealers, terrorists, and kleptocrats to exploit the United States banking system in order to carry out anti-American activities. Mark Warner, a Democratic senator from Virginia and advocate for the reform, said in a statement, "Well, that's all fine and well, Mr. Warner, but you're not going to blow smoke up my ass, sir. Literally all of the bagmen you know are going to be pissed off about this. So I don't know how you're going to break it to the investor class, the people that literally put Joe Biden into power. It's going to be a rough sell to those folks, and I'd like to see how you guys are going to pull it off, that's for sure. But I'll tell you what, it is very refreshing to at least hear them talking about this, to at least hear that they're going to attempt this. Now, do I think that their overlords in the banking and financial system are going to be okay with it? No. Do I expect there to be some backdoors? Yes. But is it a nice step in the right direction? It most certainly is. I know that the current holes in our financial system pose a serious threat to national security. He's not wrong about that. They certainly do. They most certainly do. And especially if you have one of these politicians who has received money from a foreign entity, or whose family has received money from a foreign entity, or these people who might have blackmail information on a politician. This stuff is definitely a serious threat to national security. And once you start getting involved in financial crimes with people, they have you there as well, right? So if you're involved as a senator or a congressman in some shady financial deal, and your feet are getting held to the fire by someone who's lobbying you, and they have that information that, you were involved in this money laundering scam, well, they can put your feet to the fire and press you to do what they want you to do. Sort of like Epstein did, but with the sex trafficking as opposed to the money laundering. Although I suspect that Jeffrey Epstein had quite the record of people he was involved with financially, and people who were probably engaging in financial crimes with him. I'm sure he has a record of those people, and the question really becomes, where is that information, right? Does the FBI have it? Is it hidden somewhere? Was it destroyed? Again, there's not enough transparency for us to even really know where any of that evidence possibly is. If passed, the legislation would in large part end anonymous shell companies in the United States, mandating that every company report its ultimate owner to the U.S. Treasury Department. This would allow law enforcement to quickly ascertain who owns firms involved in potential financial crimes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Again, I'm not a big person for extreme draconian regulation in most sectors. But the financial sector has proven time and time again that they can't be trusted. So they need to be regulated. They need to be regulated in a stringent manner. And this sort of vernacular coming out from the Democrats here, from Mark Warner, from Sherrod Brown, we've heard from previously, it's a lot of big talk. And I hope that they're willing to put this talk into action, and I'm hoping that they're willing to enforce it all over the board and not, let their friends skate by. I hope that this is just an over-the-board regulation and there's no garbage language in it. A prevalence of anonymous shell companies makes laundering and moving money derived from corruption and other criminal activity easier and makes the lives of compliance officials and law enforcement harder. This was underscored in ICIJ's recent FinCen Files investigation, a global collaboration involving more than 100 media partners around the world examining torrents of suspicious money flowing through major banks. And this was just incredibly well done by all involved. The way they exposed the SARS and how there is a huge regulation problem within FinCen itself was very important for moving this story along, because people don't really want to see things until it's right in front of their face, right? Once you have all of that stuff in front of your face, once you see all of the information that's out, you see the whistleblowers, you see the leaks, you get to read the emails that these sons of bitches were sending through to each other through WikiLeaks or the Paradise Papers, you see what happened with the FinCen files. It is rather obvious that there was change needed. And I just hope that this is that change, or at the very least, the beginning of that change. Because the way that the financial system gets played by these scuzzbags in so-called polite society is sickening. The project was based on leaked U.S. Treasury Department documents detailing more than $2 trillion flowing through the U.S. financial system. The record showed bank compliance officers searching in vain to determine who was behind shell companies, moving massive amounts of money through their firms' accounts. And now imagine, how is it even possible that that occurred? If you or I take out any kind of money, forget it. You know that they're going to be all over us, right? You take out over 10 grand, forget it. You got to sign paperwork. 10,001 cent, time to CTR up. You go into the casino and you gamble. Once you get to $3,000, you get put on something called an MTL sheet. And what that MTL sheet is it tracks your play. And once you hit that $10,000 mark, CTR'd. But these people don't play by those same rules. We know that Darren Indyke was structuring 97 different withdrawals from an ATM in the amount of $7,500. And that isn't considered suspicious? That isn't something that they crack down on right away? But you, well, if you, like I said, if you go to the casino and gamble, forget it. You're going to be tracked for sure. But these people, they don't live by the same rules. They do whatever the hell they want, when they want to do it. And as far as moving money, these shell companies act as the perfect vehicle for them to move this money and pump it through the system. In recent years, the United States has become a prominent destination for tainted money, largely because it has some of the world's best options for those wanting to cloak their activity behind highly secretive shell companies. Of course it is America, right? That's where all these rich scallions are. So of course they have the system set up in their best interest. Of course they have the system propped up so it benefits them and screws us. You ever wonder why you're getting a 26% finance fee? It's because of these scumbag banksters and their friends in Congress and the Senate who set the whole entire playing field for them. The Tax Justice Network, an advocacy group, ranks the United States as the second most secretive jurisdiction on earth, second only to the Cayman Islands, and beating even places like Switzerland that are known for intense banking secrecy. It's obscene, folks. It is obscene in the United States of America, where every single thing that you do is under surveillance for the common citizen. Everything you do is tracked. These people have these laws in place so that they can manipulate them, so that they can hide their money, so that they cannot pay their fair share, and so that they can continue with their criminal enterprises without anyone being none the wiser. And it has been like that for far too long. The financial system should have been utterly destroyed after the collapse. But no, they were propped up. They were too big to fail. And yet here we are now in the year 2020, on the way into 2021, and still talking about the egregious behavior of these very same institutions. Often owned by opaque LLCs, luxury real estate in posh locations like New York and Miami now rival the classic secretive Swedish bank account for rich customers aiming to hide money. Also, the art industry, right? We've talked about that before, how much dark, dirty money is in the art industry. I mean, you have people like Leon Black with $1 billion art collection. Is it really worth $1 billion? How much is it worth? More than that. Or how much more art do you have stashed away, put elsewhere? So it is very apparent what's going on here. These people have been manipulating the system for far too long. And finally, Congress is waking up from its heroin buzz and they're starting to take notice. Although the expected legislation would have a profound effect on this dynamic, the ownership data submitted to the Treasury Department would likely not be made available to the public. Of course not. There's no transparency. You see, that's the key. They might put these laws into place and they might, blow some smoke up our ass and pat us on the back and tell us that they're going to fix things. But really, when it comes down to it, there's no transparency. The public's never involved, and the public has no access to really what's going on behind the scenes. We have to trust the bureaucrats that are in charge of these institutions, and we all know how that ends up for us. The exact language in the draft defense spending bill, known as the National Defense Authorization Act, has not yet been released, but a spokesperson for Senator Warner said that it is expected to contain the provisions around corporate secrecy that the senator has fought for. So, according to Senator Warner's office, he's going hard. He's charging hard. He wants to make sure secrecy is no longer attained by these people. Blah, 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 blah. Warner, you've been in office for a long time, my friend. And excuse me if I am cynical, if I don't really trust what you have to say here. Now, I want it to occur, and I hope that it occurs, but these people that we have in D.C., people like Warner and all of the other incumbents that have been there for years, are not people that I trust. I think that they're all scummy. I think that they're all scamming and plotting and figuring out how to enrich themselves on the backs of the American people. And I don't think that our best interest is ever put first. I think it's always the purse or the pocketbook of these congressmen and women and these senators. And every now and then you'll run across one that wants to do the right thing, but they get swallowed by the wave of scumbag kleptocrats that surround them. So I'd really like to see the language in this. This is all a nice idea, a nice first step, but I don't think that this is the cudgel that is needed to smash these people over the head. To do that, we'd have to send some of these people to prison. Some of these banksters have to go to prison to set an example. That is the way to fix this. The expected language mirrors the Illicit Cash Act introduced last year. That bill was introduced by a bipartisan group of senators, including Warner, as well as Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas, and Catherine Cortez Masto, a Democrat from Nevada. So the Illicit Cash Act is a bill that was put forward to stop money laundering, right? But now what they're doing is, instead of trying to push it as just the Illicit Cash Act, they've inserted it into the omnibus bill to try and force the hand of people that are voting on the spending bill. So it's a shrewd move. It is a pretty typical move in D.C. to insert things in a larger bill. But this one time right here, I am really not that mad about it, because a lot of these senators and congressmen and women are bought and paid for by the banks, and they would never vote on something like this of their own accord. If they're forced to vote on it in a larger bill, then, well, what are you going to do? You're forced to vote for it. But I hope that it has teeth. And I hope that it's enforced. Do I think that it's going to be? Not so much. But we'll have to see, right? At least there are the steps are being taken to curb this. Steps are being taken to bring these people to heel. The question is, are these steps far enough? If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. To everybody who has donated to the podcast, thank you folks very much. I'll be back later on, and we'll see what the hell is going on in the world of Jeffrey Epstein then.